Welcome everyone to this Golden Goose Award nominations webinar. I'm Erin Heath. I work for the American Association for the Advancement of Science in the Office of Government Relations, and I'm also one of the three co-chairs of the Golden Goose Award Steering Committee. I'll turn it now to Meredith to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Meredith Asbury, Associate Vice President for Government Relations and Public Policy at the Association of American Universities. AAU has been one of the founding organizations of the Golden Goose Award and also housed the award until 2017 when we handed it off to AAAS.
And my name is Gwendolyn Bogard. I'm the third co-chair of Golden Goose. I work with Erin at AAAS, and I'm the Senior Government Relations Officer there.
All right, Meredith, you are up.
All right, next slide. Here is just a brief outline of what we plan to cover in today's webinar. We'll explain more about what the Golden Goose Award is and what makes it distinct from other awards. We'll provide some examples of past award stories, why it's important to be telling these stories now, and finally walk through the details of the nominations process. We'll also leave time at the end to answer any questions, so feel free to drop questions into the Q&A function as you have them, and we will get to them at the end. And with that, I will turn it over to Erin to kick us off.
All right, I'm going to first talk about the history of the award. Many years ago now, Congressman Jim Cooper approached a few organizations, including AAAS and AAU, with an idea. You see, Cooper had been watching another member of Congress, Senator Bill Proxmire, give out what he called Golden Fleece Awards to target what he considered to be wasteful government spending. And sometimes these targeted scientific research. Cooper wanted to turn that negative narrative on its head and showcase the positive stories about science that goes in unexpected and exciting directions. So 9 founding organizations got together and started this award in 2012, and we've been going ever since. Next slide. As you just heard, the award was started by a member of Congress, and since its inception, it's enjoyed bipartisan, bicameral support. Members of Congress come to our ceremony every year to talk about the benefits of federal support of scientific research and development. They've also talked about it on the House floor, in congressional hearings, in the media, and with their constituents. We informally call them the gaggle, and we are happy to have them in our corner. Next slide. I mentioned we have an awards ceremony every year. It's every September on Capitol Hill to tell some of the stories of game-changing federally funded research. Participants can attend either live or virtually, and successful nominators also receive invitations to our exclusive awardee luncheon. So keep an eye on our website and social media next year for more details on the 2026 celebration. Meredith, over to you.
As Erin mentioned, our most recent award ceremony was just held last month. And so these are the stories that we awarded. The first award went to a team of researchers at Michigan State University who, thanks to support from NSF in the 1960s and 70s, explored electric fields affecting cell division in E. coli bacteria and observed that when the electric field was applied, the bacteria stopped growing and instead elongated into spaghetti-like shapes. This observation encouraged them to explore further what was happening, and by 1978, cisplatin, a platinum-based chemotherapy drug, was approved for use and has most notably resulted in increasing the survival rate of testicular cancer from around 10% in the 1970s to 90%, to over 90% today.
Our other award went to cell biologist Joseph Gall. From a young age, Dr. Gall loved learning about all of nature's critters, like frogs and microscopic organisms. And this knowledge came in handy years later in his research lab, where he was able to repeatedly connect the right biological organism to the right experiment to make breakthroughs. One of those breakthroughs, a technique called in situ hybridization, changed the way we diagnose certain cancers and other diseases. Dr. Gall was funded by the National Science Foundation early in his career and for a long time throughout his career, the National Institutes of Health. He was also a renowned mentor, particularly for women scientists in an era when that wasn't the norm.
All right, next slide. In addition to this year's award stories, the Golden Goose Award has honored over 90 researchers, including 15 Nobel Prize winners. And we wanted to highlight some other previous award stories here that continue to resonate. In 2013, the Golden Goose Award honored John Eng for his work on studying the venom of the Gila monster that led to a novel diabetes treatment in 2005. If you fast forward to today and the popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy have also been developed as a result of this work.
Also in 2013, we awarded 2 biologists whose exploration of hot springs in Yellowstone National Park led to the discovery of a microorganism, Thermus aquaticus, that was stable at very high temperatures. This discovery paved the way for a quick and reliable way to copy DNA, which has had major impacts on the way we test for diseases as well as other areas of genomics.
And in 2016, the Golden Goose Award honored a team of researchers at Georgia Tech and Cornell University for developing an algorithm informed by the foraging behavior of honeybees. And that has since helped allocate internet traffic among computer servers and streamline internet services for consumers. Those are just a few examples, and we encourage you to browse the Golden Goose Award website at goldengooseaward.org for a full repository of past award stories and impacts. Next slide. As noted earlier, what sets the Golden Goose Award apart from other honors is its unique focus on the role of federal research funding in enabling groundbreaking discoveries. The chart here illustrates the federal support behind the work of past awardees, highlighting agencies like the NIH and NSF as frequent connections, as their investments in basic research have often supported the exploratory beginnings of the stories that have been recognized. That being said, we'd love to have even more federal funding connections to add to this list. And so there's no limitation on what entity within the federal government support can come from. And we welcome nominations that allow us to tell a variety of stories and their connections to federal research funding. Next slide.
You can find stories about some of our previous Golden Goose awardees in major publications like the New York Times or popular podcasts like Radiolab. Visit our website to get a glimpse of these stories. And we want to keep telling more, which leads me to the next slide on the nominations process. Nominations can be submitted at any time throughout the year. But for the best chance of getting into the next cycle, 2026, please submit by December 12th. There is no limit to how many you can submit, and there are 3 general criteria. 1, quality science funded by the US federal government. 2, a major impact on society. And 3, an element of the unexpected. This could be research that is odd, obscure, or even silly sounding, or work that has an element of serendipity.
Next slide. Moving on to the nomination form itself, there are 6 brief sections we ask nominators to fill in. The first section is just basic nomination information and contact information for the nominator and nominee or nominees. You can also give your nomination a title, list the federal funding sources, either just listing the agencies with connections, or if you have specific grant numbers, that can be helpful as we validate the nominations that we receive. Moving on to the actual nomination form questions, there are 4 total, and the first asks you to describe the nature of the research conducted and federal agencies that supported the nomination's work. A good nomination here will detail who is involved in the project, a time frame for the work, and how federal funding played a role. For question number 2, we asked the nominator to explain how the research appeared unusual or obscure and consider if it had questionable value at the time it was originally funded. This question is really focused on the initial perception of the research, how it looked when it was first proposed or funded, and was it considered obscure, trivial, or perceived as meaningless work. Additionally, explaining why it may have lacked clear practical application or societal relevance at the time it was proposed or the time of initial funding can also be helpful. Next slide. While question 2 is really focused more on the origin story of the research, in question 3, we are looking more at the outcomes and what the research ultimately led to. This would be a good place to talk about serendipitous or unexpected discoveries that resulted from the research, or how something made the jump to having a more practical application. On question number 4, we are looking for impact statements on the research project that answer how this research has greatly contributed to society, the economy, or national security. This would be a place to share useful statistics or data points as well. I'll also note that one common error we often see in this section that can sometimes be the difference between a story advancing or not advancing is limiting statements to what could result from the research, meaning the impact hasn't really been fully accomplished yet. For the Golden Goose Award to issue an award, the impact must already be present and demonstrable. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that additional impacts couldn't come later or afterward, as we saw in the example of the diabetes medication that eventually became a treatment for obesity. But we need to have some initial significant impact in order to advance a story. The last section of the nomination form is a section on references, and would encourage nominators to include anything and everything that can help the selection committee validate the story during the review process. This could include important research publications related to the story, funding information, news articles, videos, or any other material that may detail the story or the individuals involved. Next slide. We have put together a document that provides helpful tips for submitting a nomination, including potential questions to consider answering for each section of the nomination form that I just walked through. That is available on our nomination webpage on the Golden Goose Award website, and we will also put the links in the chat here. And finally, just a final reminder that the nominations deadline for consideration of the 2026 award cycle is December 12th, so just under 2 months away. Next slide.
It's so important that members of the community submit nominations so we can keep telling these stories. That's why we're doing this webinar. And there are other ways to help as well. Organizations can sponsor the Golden Goose Award. This is always very much appreciated, and you can find more information about that on our website. We would also encourage you to amplify our call for nominations on social media or in your newsletters or other channels. The best way to get a diverse collection of stories is to get this information out far and wide. We're on LinkedIn, X, and YouTube. And many organizations also share these stories and their own advocacy efforts focused on the importance of federally funded research and development. And now it's time for Q&A.
Wonderful. I'll come back on video for this. Thank you both for that. And I'm going to go into our Q&A that has been submitted. To kick us off, though, in the meantime, Meredith, could you just talked about the like the timeline that we're working with, the deadline, but would you mind reiterating that and talk a little bit about how we treat the deadline, how we kind of have a rolling situation set up?
Yeah, so the nominations deadline, as I mentioned, is Friday, December 12th. after December 12th, we will continue to collect nominations. The form is actually always live on our webpage. But they just may not make it into the pool of nominations for review for the 2026 award cycle. And one important thing that I didn't raise earlier is once a story is nominated and say it's approved by the selection committee, it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be awarded in that year that it is submitted. So the Golden Goose Award awards up to 3 stories per year, which can sometimes mean we may have more approved stories than we can award in a year. And so we will hold on to those approved nominations and try and work them into a subsequent year. The bottom line here is a nomination really doesn't expire once it's been submitted. If it doesn't get awarded in that year, it was submitted, so it does not need to be resubmitted. However, if there are additional details or evidence that strengthens a nomination that comes to light later on, there is nothing that precludes a nomination from being resubmitted with that updated information.
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. Yeah, thanks for that explanation. I guess next steps, Erin, would you talk a little bit about what comes after once a nomination is submitted? What do we do with it?
Sure. It goes through a multi-stage process. We have a selection committee of experts in various fields of science that evaluate our pool of nominations in a given year. And we also have a steering committee that's more involved in the production of the award that weighs in. And finally, the top nominations go through a research and information gathering phase.
Awesome, thank you. I guess next question, what happens even after that? What happens if a nomination is selected to move forward?
Yeah, so if your nomination is approved by the selection committee, you will likely be hearing from one of the 3 of us, looking to schedule kind of a follow-up conversation to talk to you more about the nomination. We will want to first know if you have any way of connecting us to an awardee. That is actually sometimes the hardest part in issuing an award is reaching the nominees. Can actually take a while for one reason or another. So we will often work with the nominator if they're able to help us with making that point of contact. But also to be clear, it's not a requirement to nominate a story and know the individuals that you're nominating. Though we often do find that the nominator can be a good starting place to start trying to figure that out. Now, if ultimately the nomination you submitted is awarded, we would let you know and invite you to the ceremony events. If the nominator has a connection to the story in some way or could speak to as an expert in the field of research to help validate the work that's being awarded, you could be asked to be a part of the documentary video or help to vet the written story that we post on our website.
Certainly. Thanks, Meredith. We have a next question. What we touched on this briefly, but I guess expanding on it, what are some common mistakes that you see in a nomination and the opposite? What would be elements that you'd see in a good nomination?
Yeah, I can take that one. First, a Golden Goose Award needs to be federally funded. So it helps us when a nomination can point to sources confirming that.
Yeah.
Second, the most common pitfall we see is that the impact isn't quite there yet. We want to see demonstrated impact on society, the economy, or science itself. And then third, remembering the storytelling component. That's what we call the goosiness. That's the element of the unexpected. So all of these things go into a good nomination.
Thank you. And I'll add, sometimes I've heard from folks that we are all busy. The nomination has multiple steps. There are different questions to answer, and sometimes people just have a tip or a piece of information that they think might be expanded upon. Meredith, would you talk a little bit about what we might suggest if someone just has an idea, a seed of an idea?
Yeah, a couple of options. I think one, uh, reach out to any of us and we'd be happy to work with you on a nomination. Since we're not members of the selection committee, we can often be a sounding board for any nomination ideas or provide advice on who you may want to consult with on a nomination. Depending on the story, we can also identify who may be the best nominator if you're not sure or you don't want to be listed yourself. And then also, if you have a nominee or work that you think would be good for Golden Goose, but don't have that time to write the nomination, understanding that everyone is super busy, you can certainly email us with any ideas to look into further, and we can kind of see what we can do. I will say I've had quite a number of interns in the past who've, uh, done a research project to look up a nomination and went on to submit them. And really, we just need those seed corn ideas, the beginning of something that we can start researching and look into more. In the past, I've also helped set up informational interviews with folks who may be on campus and have more access to information about a particular story or a nominee and their research work and provide a little bit more of that context. So there are many different ways that we can work this, but you shouldn't feel pressured to be the only one to submit a nomination. I think we're happy to take those ideas and run with them ourselves too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Meredith. And yeah, I second all of that. And I want to mention too, if anyone in this webinar has further questions or it wants to or couldn't think of any right now, feel free to reach out to us at any time. We are here to be resources. Yeah, I will turn it over you to wrap it up.
All right. Well, we really thank everyone who's attended the webinar today. Hope you found it useful. Of course, as co-chairs of the award, we are always accessible and available to answer any questions, whether it's about nominations or how to be more involved in the award events and sponsoring or being more involved in the activities of the award. So, be in touch, but thank you for this concludes the webinar for today, and we look forward to your nominations.